We are good to go? Okay, great. This is the October 3rd meeting of the Advisory Committee of the Town of Norfolk. Since we have a quorum, I'll call the meeting to order. And we just received today, Cindy, we'll just need a couple of minutes for a couple of organizational things, but you'll be right on, and I think we probably have you out of here in 15 minutes or something. I don't think it'll take too long. So we have a warrant that you've just gotten. We got it at 5:30 tonight, so it's there in front of you. There are some CPC articles that I thought we could discuss early because we don't have a whole lot of time. The warrant's late. You'll see there's a lot of stuff still in process, a lot of, again, unnumbered articles and so on. So I wanted us to at least be able to make a dent in something tonight. So we'll do that, and we'll look through whatever else we think we might be able to look through.
All right.
We also have to appoint our 2 members to the Capital Committee. And then some planning for going ahead. So I've invited CPC here to discuss the articles with us. 2 of them are relatively straightforward. 2 of them are probably going to require some discussion. One is missing a number. So we may not get through all of them, but we'll get somewhere. So with that as introduction to that, Cindy, if you'd like to
I can speak to the 2 easy ones.
join us. Would you want to get a chair and just come up here and join us? Why don't you sit over there next to Art so that you'll be facing the camera?
Cindy, unless you like to sit right here.
Oh, yeah, that's true. We got
Betsy,
chairs,
cool.
don't we?
I'm sorry, they keep
sorry.
calling you Cindy because
Betsy.
they expected
Oh,
Cindy.
I'm sorry.
Betsy.
Cindy may arrive at any minute now, so
And your last name is Pine, right?
fine.
Okay.
That's-
Sure, I should,
Sorry, that's.
sorry about that. I
That's okay.
am easily confused.
That's okay.
Um,
Cindy, Betsy's pretty close.
Hey, you.
There's a certain resemblance to
Yeah.
it. Anyway, still no excuse. In any event, the 2 articles unnumbered.
Jack actually numbered them late, Pat, so if you look.
Oh, you've got
108
handwritten
and
stuff.
something.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Okay, so we have
Thank you.
articles numbered, let's see, page 3, I think
Page
they
3,
start.
right.
Yep.
108 through 111.
The 17,800 for the Pondville Cemetery Crypt and the 2,100 for the Tramp House are both specific, very specific amounts, and the amounts are known. So if you just give us a quick update as to what those are about and why.
All right. The first one, having to do with the Pondville Cemetery. A couple of years back, we started on a preservation and restoration program for the crypt that's there that was donated by Virgil Pond. And we hired a conservator who wrote up a spec of everything to do in the most minute detail. And Lowell Robinson also made his recommendations as to how he thought the landscaping should be changed or improved. And we completed a half of it about 3 years ago. And now we're going on to the second half. And it consists of taking down the steel door and completely sandblasting it and making it like new and repairing it, grading some of the land because Tom Benedetti was telling me that he's afraid somebody's feet might be sticking out pretty soon with the erosion of this little hill. There's a little hill that comes down on either side of the crypt, and that was all refurbished, but it needs to be, they're going to make a retaining wall there. And
Keep the feet in.
to keep the feet in and to make it, to stabilize it. And I think they're going to put in some stones in front of the crypt, and they're going to fix the some big stones that were along the street, and there's a corner block that is kind of smashed, and they wanted to replace it. And with the exception of a sign, because we've had some requests to put in a nice interpretive sign like we have on Town Hill, perhaps, or something to that nature, explaining the cemetery. We didn't want to do it with this. This will virtually complete the restoration of the Pondville Cemetery, with the exception of the sign.
You said this was half done about 3 years ago?
Yes, the crypt itself was kind of deteriorating, and there was parging over the top and on the sides, and it was like falling away, and the water was washing through, and it was unsightly and unstable, and so we hired a firm to repair that. Hi. And that was completed. We did not attempt to do the door because the door was, more money than we had planned on, and so that's why we're now finishing it. But it looks a whole lot better than it did, when we first started.
Charlie, we just got a warrant a few hours ago. We've got Betsy here to talk to us about a few CPC articles, page 3 of the warrant that you've got in front of you.
Thank you very much. Sorry I'm late.
108, 109.
You want to spend roughly $18,000 to finish the Pondville Cemetery restoration that was started a few years ago.
Less than like this.
Are there any questions? Then,
Oh, goody.
see, you do look alike.
We do.
Same hair and everything. I was calling Betsy Cindy.
Oh, yeah, I'll answer to anything.
That's right.
Uh,
So I can do the easy ones. I'll give Cindy the hard ones.
Okay, let's go on to what we have as Article 109, which is the $2,100 for the
Right.
tramp house repairs.
The tramp house basically needs a new front door. It is a metal door, which is not very appropriate to the historic building, but that's not the reason we're replacing it. There's a gigantic rust hole down at the bottom, and it's, really, maybe it's from people kicking the door every time they go in for goodness knows how long, but it's really deteriorating, and pieces of rust are falling down on the streets, and Ron Bain and the selectmen and, Sam Ziegler and I looked it over, and we decided it indeed needs a new door. Some of the corrosion in the water that's evident in the door is also evidenced in the molding surrounding the door. So all all that work around the door also needs to be replaced. And there were some clapboards that needed to be replaced. Not too many, but some. And I was looking at it just Sunday with Sam Ziegler, and he's ready to do the work. And we had a quote from Sam. He's going to do the repairs. He's going to paint the areas that, where he's going to replace a few clapboards, paint the trim around the door. And it's a very modest amount because we didn't think it was quite necessary yet to paint the whole building. So that'll be coming, in the next few years, perhaps.
Who's Sam Ziegler?
Sam Ziegler is the carpenter par excellence that has, his life's work is restoration of historic buildings. And he lives on Main Street, and he has always been a great help to the Historical Commission if we have a building that needs to be evaluated or repairs, like to the tramp house. We will often ask Sam. So he's the one that stepped up and gave me an estimate of what it would cost for the materials and his labor, and that was the amount.
Is he also involved in the other restoration at the cemetery?
No, because that's other specialized,
Type of work,
yeah.
more earth moving and that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
masonry?
and metal. I mean, this is a cast iron door, so it's very specialized.
Alrighty. Any questions from anybody about that one?
What's the approximate balance for the historical preservation portion of CPC?
I think it's a healthy amount. I think it's above 300,000.
Okay, so this is less than 10% of the
This is a
balance.
small amount, yes.
Alrighty, now on to the, I'm sorry, any other discussion or questions before we move on? We'll discuss these again
Okay.
before we vote on these, if we do get to voting on them tonight, but I just want to let these folks move along as quickly as possible. The $40,000 for the historical work of laser fiching our 1943 tax bills, et cetera. So,
All the town reports, all the vital records. I think this amount of money includes Cindy, does it include hardware or just
Yes,
software?
I just handed
just
out
sent
the
a-
cost
Oh, good.
details.
This is Pat.
Good.
If you-
Cindy to the
this one,
rescue,
Pat.
because I didn't have the details. Hardware, software, tutoring, the actual work of doing the scanning, and also, I believe there's backup training. And Cindy's really the expert on this. Cindy, do you have one of these?
That's what I just handed out.
Yeah. This application came before us, submitted by the town clerk, and as you probably know, the vital records of the town reports are all just in little teeny tiny books floating around, and in books in the safe in the ground floor, and when the selectmen moved the town clerk up, or when the town clerk moved up to the next floor, I think they go up and down all the time to put books into the safe. But this work of digitizing historic records has been done in other towns in the Commonwealth with CPC funds, and they felt that it would be exceedingly useful and necessary to not only have access to all these data, but to put them in a form where they could be preserved and for safekeeping and even kept off-site in other towns in case of fire. And I don't know, Cindy, do you want to add some more to that?
The only thing I was going to add, I don't think Betsy mentioned, this will become an easily searchable database as opposed to paper trail. And also, under the labor scanning, it shows you the estimated amount of records that will be covered.
Excuse me, what's the format that it'll be stored on?
It is stored,
In other words, you know, it says microfilming all scanned simultaneously. You got to store it on microfilm,
no, it's microfiche.
right? But is that what it is? Is that
Will
what
be
you're
a
storing it
hard
on?
computer, hard copy on the computer. It's not a paper copy.
Is it on a hard drive or is it
I
on
believe it's on a hard drive.
Okay. You
Or,
probably,
server.
I mean, that's something you really should know about. I'm in the industry, and you probably want to get it stored on optical. That'll be around for 100 years or so.
It's whatever they're using, and this is not my area of expertise either, but it is whatever is the industry standard right now.
There isn't an industry standard, just to give you an FYI. I mean, everybody's got something different, and it's based upon
It's
cost, you know.
supposed to, this is supposed to integrate with basically almost any system. In other words, it could integrate with the Munis system, it can integrate with other operating systems. You know, Sean had hoped to be able to come in to give you a better understanding of it, and I'm sure he'd be happy to come in at a future date if you had additional questions.
I'd be very interested to hear about that. I mean,
I agree.
anything is going to be compatible to anything, whether you put it on a tape, a thumb drive, or whatever. And microfilming is older technology.
It's not
right now.
microfilm.
Yeah.
Right. Copy of the records will be kept off-site, a searchable system. I know it's all, you know, on the computer. It's not actually that old film, that I can tell you.
Okay.
And there is, like I said, there is a whole separate, whatever the storage mechanism is, there's a whole nother copy kept off-site at all
Are they?
times.
I'm just curious. Are they charging you for off-site storage of that too? I mean, for a long term. In other words, can you access that in 10 years? And is it their site that you're accessing it from? Because if they go out of business or whatever, and it's being
No,
stored.
I believe it's kept with another town. The
There was
backup.
going to be
Okay,
reciprocal storage. We
Right.
were going to store some from Mendon, and they were going to store some of ours, or,
You see that? To be honest with you, I mean, I appreciate the whole concept of what you're doing, but these are all very, very important questions that really need to be addressed.
perhaps Sean should.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
if Sean
yeah,
wasn't
I
able
think
to make
I
it
agree,
tonight,
Donna.
but
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah, what we're doing
But
here.
you
By
also
all
have to
means.
remember,
Technically, what are we doing?
Yeah.
this is not,
This is
the
just a fact.
records are the paper. We cannot
Right.
get rid of the paper.
right.
This is just converting the paper into something that anybody in California or China can access over the web, instead of having to come here and look at
Right,
the
but that
physical
has
book.
to reside somewhere. In
Well, it's
other
going to
words,
reside, just like any other system, it's going to reside on the network that you buy with backup, but it's, you know, don't confuse that this means we then do away with the 1,000-year-old records. Those,
Oh, no, I
those are kept.
understand
This
all
is
that,
simply
yeah.
converting everything that we have on paper into a usable, accessible database.
Searchable.
And searchable.
Right.
Check that out.
This says, "We selected Laserfiche as our technology platform because of its open architecture, integration ability, and capacity to scale up as your demand for information sharing and access grows." I'm not sure if that gives you the answer you want, but
So is the Laserfiche meeting the need of being searchable regardless of location? I'm saying we have to keep the paper, we want something that's searchable anywhere. Laserfiche doesn't accomplish either of those.
I don't,
Laserfiche, I think, is a,
A backup to the paper?
it's a backup, no, it's a backup to the electronic scanning. That's my understanding.
Backup to the electronic.
I mean, it's
Do a little
pretty
research.
clear we need to hear from Sean
I
regarding
think you need to
the
hear from Sean.
technical
Okay, that's
aspects
fine.
of it, so.
the concept certainly sounds
Yeah,
good.
concept is
Yeah.
perfect, and I don't mean to be picking, it's just that I'm in this business, so, and basically everything called the cloud is potentially what this could be, but it has to reside somewhere. If it only resides here, then, you're right, there has to be a backup off-site somewhere, but where is that somewhere? Is it in, Joe's cellar, or if it
I-
has social security numbers on it, it has to be stored in a, any records like
secure
that.
place.
In some place,
Yeah.
it's very secure.
Well,
my understanding, and again, I'll defer to Sean when he is able to talk to you, is that it's
another town
another
clerk's office.
town's another town's town clerk office.
The purpose of it is in case of a natural disaster, that the records exist somewhere. Not that it be accessible or used, or it's just kept there for protection
Right,
against damage.
sure.
And are we doing the scanning, or this is an outside firm?
I think the outside firm
The
is doing
outside
all
firm
the
begins
scanning.
it, but then we'll be training the Norfolk employees and potentially volunteers.
Oh, because this will be an ongoing thing.
It'll be an ongoing process.
Which is the
This is
6,000
the
of
start,
training. Okay.
and then it will be done as a matter of day-to-day, so to speak, workflow to do.
I'm sure there's a lot of thinking behind this, and again, I support the goal in addition to the question about the data storage. We're talking, I think, about, right now, 100,000 records. Seems just $12,000 to access 100,000 records seems really expensive, but again, I don't understand all the moving parts, so.
Well, the cost is in the labor of, converting this, of getting this old format. You have 100-year-old books that are going to have to be scanned.
Which I
That's
think is
incredibly,
covered.
it's incredibly labor intensive. That's where all the cost is.
Well, that's 19,000, but there's 12,000 up here for regular software that we're gonna pay support for every year. What's
Well,
that?
you should see what we pay for any of our software. I mean, you can't buy a software system and not maintain it for less than $20, $25, $50, $100,000. I mean, I get very anxious about when we try and sort of say, we know better. This,
Well, I guess what's unclear to me is exactly what they're doing. So I understand the upfront costs. The software is then, again, if you could just describe, I guess, what people are doing, that would be helpful. So
Okay.
is this software, for example, to then do all the records going forward, to then scan
Yes.
to multiple
Yes.
sites?
every vital record going forward forever will exist on paper by law, because the law does not allow us to maintain electronic records as the permanent record, but will then also permanently be added to a database that becomes accessible. So the paper will get stored somewhere because the state requires that, and then, this ongoing system will continue to maintain every birth certificate, every marriage certificate, every death certificate that the town does. This does not involve anything to do with tax bills, utility bills. It's only the vital records maintained by the town clerk's office.
And again, I get the electronic scanning, I get saving the paper, I still am unclear as to what microfilming has to do with that.
It's converting microfilmed records that exist onto the computer system.
So that's just part of the one-time thing, we're not
It's
creating
it's
any
just
new-
another format that
Creating
currently
more
exists that has to be converted to the electronic.
It is creating microfiche.
That's what I don't get, but,
Right,
okay.
I don't get that part either.
Are you sure you're not converting microfiche records that currently exist?
I don't believe so, but Sean is the expert.
Yeah, all right. Well,
Microfiche would
we'll
be
get
an
him in.
odd
You would
destination.
not, in today's day, you would not buy a software
this
package
stuff.
and then have microfiche.
Which is part of Al's question, I think, is that.
So but I think the answer is,
Laserfiche.
Yeah, Laserfiche.
Sorry.
the answer is we need Sean to
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
deal with
fine.
the
I would like
technical
Sean to
issues.
explain it all.
And, presumably, he had a technical consultant that he worked with on this
Yes.
too, I would
Would you
guess,
like,
so.
I can give you, if anyone wants to look at the copy of the packet that was given to us, I'd be,
Please.
you can have it
so-
for the advisory board records,
Thank you.
because we have other copies.
I have an unrelated, non-technical question about this, and this is the source of the funds. You mentioned that other towns have done this with historical preservation money. It seems to me an odd use of that fund, because a lot of this is just ordinary town business records, I assume, that seems to me is just something that a town would do in the normal course of its operations without tapping into specifically historical funds.
Well,
And I'm
it's,
curious as to whether we're on completely solid ground as far as this being a legitimate use of these funds.
Pat, when you said business records, what did you mean by marriage certificates and?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the nature of all of these documents here.
you're talking birth certificates, vital record certificates, town reports, not just business
No, not
accounting.
business, I mean, there is no.
Not operating, it's the record, so like the town report is the record of the warrants and the votes and all of that information.
I think it's meant to be a
So it's-
one-time thing of records from the past.
Right, that currently, I know the current town report, if it isn't already online, it would be online, but none of the past ones were available electronically at all.
I guess my question is whose determination at this point is it that this is in fact a legitimate use of the historical funds? Is it,
We checked with the
Okay.
Community Preservation Coalition, and there is precedent that this is an appropriate use.
Going forward, it would be part of the regular town clerk's
Right.
budget.
Mark?
We had the same
Wellesley?
question.
Yes.
Has Wellesley done this?
I don't know. But I agree wholeheartedly, because I've been barking on this tree for years. We have no ability to spend all the money we have reserved for historical preservation. It's impossible. There just are
It is
not
not
enough.
impossible, excuse me.
Well, it's-
Historic preservation money may be used to purchase historic farms in Norfolk.
Someday.
And to be spent on
Someday, Betsy, but we've
land.
had this discussion. Meanwhile, the thing is built up to $300,000 and $400,000 reserved, not to mention we're adding every year an additional, and I don't know what the number is, but, well, now the number is much smaller because of the reduced CPA, but we've never had the capacity to spend down historical money as we have purchasing open space and even affordable housing. So I think anything that we can find and use is, a
Well,
darn
I
good
mean,
thing.
if it's legit, I think it's a great thing. I just wanted to, it seems like not one of those black and white issues, so as long as there's solid precedent for it, then that's what I was really trying to determine.
Usually just don't ask. Just do it. If you don't think you're gonna like the answer, just don't ask, because this is not anything that'll be actively managed or supervised. If you're close, do it. If they'll agree, they're the arbiters, the Community Preservation Committee. They're the ones who say yay or nay as to whether they believe it's, legitimate for their purposes.
So there's no oversight beyond that?
I mean,
Well, the town has to agree to release the
Right,
funds.
well,
Yes, but I
town
mean,
meeting does.
In terms of people that are
No,
competent to
your
make the
auditors aren't gonna sit there
determination.
and cite it as, an improper use. There is a state agency that may, but don't ask. We used it in Wellesley to do artificial turf when everybody said you can't do artificial turf. Don't ask. The money is there, it's our money. Don't ever ask the state how we should spend our money. It's just, you're just asking for trouble.
All righty, any other questions? I think the technical stuff we have to wait on, but Charlie?
Are there any town records or any departmental or any committee records that are not being scanned under this?
Oh, I'm sure there are lots that are not
I
being
don't
scanned.
believe there are any committee records being scanned. It's really the town clerk is the start, and then going into things like town reports. I'm trying to think what else there was.
We're not
Really-
scanning
When you
minutes
say town
or,
reports, you just mean the annual report.
Like the
Yeah.
annual report with the warrant articles
Not
and the
department
vote.
reports and.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
I-
okay.
The state has a schedule that says a records retention schedule,
Right.
of which there are some records that the state mandates are permanent. Vital statistics, I think town reports, but minutes, no, tax bills, no, payment records, cash checks, those all have fixed years. After 7 years, you can do away with them. My sense of this is they have focused on the things that the state says are permanent records, can never be destroyed, and that's what they will attempt. There's the answer.
hey, there he is.
Gosh,
You get the last thing.
Right there.
His ears were burning.
Better than other parts.
By the way, I neglected to ask those who have spoken before to identify themselves, but we had Betsy Pine and Cindy Andrade here speaking to this topic. And Sean, if you would.
I am Sean Dooley, and I am the town clerk.
We were,
And I apologize for being late, but I just found out about this about 5 o'clock this afternoon, so I had to wait till Cece got home.
well, we're glad to have you because we have been talking about you.
Okay, good.
A number of questions of a technical nature have come up regarding the records preservation.
Okay.
Al, I think, and Arlie, did we finish with your question to your?
not quite, so maybe once the other
Well, why don't we wrap that up then and then move on.
coverage of the records that are going to be scanned,
Yep.
micro laser fiched in this, is it the town's permanent records?
The town's permanent records. So what it'll be will be all the vital records, births, deaths, marriage, all of the other records that we have in the vault from the town meeting minutes, town meeting reports, and all the way back to also the historical records, like we have like the Book of Women from the early 20th century. They used to keep track of all the women in town in a separate book. So, which
We don't do that anymore?
yeah. We have it on computer now, so it's not in a book. So yes, it will be all the town records,
All the permanent records?
all permanent records.
And if it's a great idea for permanent records, why not for those more transient records? What set why permanent records?
Well, from the standpoint of our appeal to the CPC for this to being historical. What we hope to do, one of the advantages of this, and Jack Hathaway has expressed it as well, is once we have the software in place, and once we're finished with all the vital records and all the permanent historical records, we're going to start expanding the use of it throughout town. What's nice about the system is, like from a building standpoint, or a planning board standpoint, we can actually have all the records for a planning board document in there, and we can actually do overlays on top of them. So, the building department can make recommendations, and that can all be seen by the planning board on the actual screen. It'll actually show an overlay where it doesn't affect the permanent record. So we can do 2, 3, 4 different layers of notes and things along those lines that will stack up on that. And so what we hope to do, and this is all internet-based, so once this is in place and we're finished with this, then we plan on having all future records going forward just automatically go into the system, because it's a fully searchable database. What the advantage is for like the selectmen in the meeting, if someone brings up something about windmills, have we ever discussed windmills? I don't know. I don't remember. I think we talked about it sometime. Searchable database. They'll be able to pull up from a town meeting report from 20 years ago. Windmill. All right. It's it's just like purely like a Google search. It'll show up and it'll highlight it. Then they will be able to pull up that document right there on their iPads, right at their meetings, and we'll also be able to do the same thing with finance and treasury, and all the other different departments throughout town hall.
And all these are already public records.
These are all public records.
So there's no issue, should be no issue of better access to private records. This is only better access to public records, not inadvertent access to private information.
Right, exactly. And what we have, and there's different security systems. I mean, this is done by General Code, which is the premier leader, and they do this nationwide. They're doing it they're the ones that do the record. It's for the U.S. government as well. So it has all this different safeguards as well. from a birth certificate standpoint. It's been approved by the Secretary of the Commonwealth for us to be using this for our vital records. So it's, everyone's records are still protected, and it's, it's all encrypted and everything along those lines.
So it's really a records management system, it's not just archiving. You can do things like retention schedules
Yep.
off this? Okay, I understand.
Well,
And- Oh, go ahead, Al.
I was going to say, where is it going to reside? In other words, it'll reside, what, on a hard drive? You say
Hard drive, yep.
web-based, but whose web? Whose hard
I
drive?
was going to say, our IT department is going to set it all up using our servers,
Okay, really?
So it's going to be on local hard drives,
local hard drive.
not on the web.
I mean, it'll be able to be accessed via the web, but it'll
The
be.
data's gonna be
Data will be
stored
stored
on
up. And then
computers here.
then also all of our, as part of this proposal, there's also a whole microfiche storage solution as well. And that's going to be actually housed at either at the Rentham or the Plainville, one of the other town halls in their vault. Basically what a lot of the clerks are doing. A year and a half ago, when the tornado that went through Munson and Brimfield, Munson basically wiped out their town hall, and all of their records went for hundreds of miles. And so a lot of the town clerks now are sharing their vault space. So if there is a catastrophic disaster, that we would have, backup disk and backup microfiche actually at the Rentham, in the Rentham vault, or in the Millis vault.
Disk and microfiche? Microfiche is older technology right now. I mean, it's-
Exactly.
So, I mean, optical disk is really
Right.
the cutting edge of what it should be on.
And that's what we're going to be doing, but they recommend from a historic preservation standpoint, the microfiche as well, from the standpoint of
Interesting,
even if
okay.
everything is corrupted, that can't be corrupt, you can literally pull it out and, and take a look at it.
Personally, I don't see anybody doing that
Okay.
in my industry at all.
Okay.
So I'm just saying it. I mean,
Oh,
they
is
might
that-
be saying it. I'm just giving you what I know from my industry.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, I was going to say.
It's either optical or.
I'm not saying the clerk's industry is
Yeah.
the ultimate and cutting edge, but that's what all the,
Yeah.
that's what all the other communities that have been doing this.
Sure, yeah.
Been doing the same thing. So I'm more than happy to, if you have additional knowledge, I'm more than happy to discuss that with the people at General Code and get their take on it as well.
Yeah.
And Sean, are the software licenses perpetual licenses, or,
They're annual licenses.
so you have to pay the license fee every year?
Yes.
And the support.
Well, the support is relatively minimal after the first year. I mean, once we're trained up and things along those lines. So we don't anticipate that being, it's not,
As a percentage, I'm
Right,
sure.
exactly.
So who are you anticipating, which group's gonna pick up the budget for the annual software fees?
I was gonna say, haven't worked with Jack about that yet. So it was, it's kind of one of those things, cart before the horse. We gotta get it, get it approved first and then go from there. But, from that standpoint, it's, obviously, it depends on how many different users are using it. If it becomes something where the entire town is using it, then it would be spread up across different departments. Obviously, the majority of it right now is through our department.
If the software company goes belly up at some point and we're left with these records and no software to access it, is there any, is this like a universal
It's
format that could be, is it like PDF or something that could be accessed through?
I was gonna say, Al probably could talk to this better than I could, but, from, well, General Code it's the leader in the industry, so they've been around since, the 20s. So I don't anticipate that, that's the reason we're not using any, there's some other local companies that actually were more expensive that we got bids from. But I don't believe it's, crazy proprietary. I presume it's proprietary, but I don't think from my understanding of it, it's relatively industry general, a majority of the software.
I just noticed that it's storing in the format of what's called a TIFF, which is like you'd store it. It's an image,
That's
like a
a-
picture.
that's a
So, for
common
instance,
format.
you can pull that up on, with microfiche, you could actually read with a, with
Magnifying glass, yeah.
magnifying glass. So that's probably, if all else fails, that's probably okay,
Right.
I go along with that. Optical, they say, you can drop that in water, and it's been proven, areas have been flooded on an optical disc. You can, technology-wise, you'll be able to retrieve that without any degradation at 100 years, so that's okay too. About the only thing is the Avante web distribution portal for $8,300. Is that a one-time thing?
That's
Is
a
that
one-time thing.
Yeah,
That's a
okay.
one-time. Oh, okay. All right, well, that's 2/3 of it.
All right.
Okay. So it's about 4K of annual.
Right.
Okay, that's a little more reasonable. Okay.
Is the 4K on here, or is the 4K
It's
in what
the-
you're
It's
looking
built
at?
in, yeah, it's in out here.
first
First two
three
items are
lines.
the,
Yeah.
those are recurring,
Right.
okay. So you would need that in the town's budget on an ongoing basis, somewhere or other.
Somewhere, yeah. And the thought process, and from personal selfish standpoint, it will make our office substantially more efficient. From the standpoint of, I think it's more, just the fact of, to give you an example of how we, currently process vital records. Someone comes in for a death certificate, like we had one the other day, was, they needed 29 copies. So it was, because they're on a special sealed paper and everything like that. You go up, you get the call, you go look in the card file catalog, you find it, you get it, you go down to the vault, you find the death certificate, you come back up, you then take it to the copy machine, and you feed them in, and just because of the way the paper works, it's basically a one-time feed, because you have to align it just perfectly, because the death certificates fill up basically the entire page, so if it's not just perfect, it cuts off part of it. So then you have to set it up like that, and then it's 29 copies, and it's, sign and date every single one, whereas, and so that process from start to finish, let's call it 20 minutes, as opposed to, the people who, the clerks who have the system already set up, they pull it up on their screen, they get the call, they pull up the screen, they hit 29, print, boom, print's already with a signature on it, and so the only thing you then have to do is do the hand sealing. But besides that, every single thing else is, all those other steps are eliminated. And same with when people are, searching historical records, they're trying to do research from a, genealogical standpoint, or, dealing with, land use records, things along those lines. What we have to do is go down there and actually, if they don't know, it's worse when they don't know a particular situation. I know this person died in the 20s. I mean, that's our only, possibility to do it. We have to go through them one at a time. So-
I don't think anybody's expressed any concerns regarding the value of the,
Right.
of the end result. I think, there were primarily technological questions
Right.
that people.
Yeah, no, but what I was saying is, from the efficiency standpoint, I think that will be more than enough to overcome
With
any,
the
the $4,000 annual fee, because I think we will save more on time and labor and efficiency, so I don't think that'll be an issue there.
Does this initial implementation and conversion cover your staff and public access? Or is public access maybe, does it position us for future expenditures to get public access? I could search it from a computer and wherever.
Well, like, the vital records, it's not available to public.
Okay.
But it does allow public record search for town, anything that's currently public, would automatically be public from day one. For
Okay.
things that aren't
I understand.
public.
Right, so things that are appropriate for the public to access, I could do that
Town
as a
reports,
result of.
exactly.
If you're considering people accessing this with like a separate URL or through the town website, there might be a couple additional bucks you might want to put in here just to integrate it.
Okay,
Just, there might be a couple, the last 5 yards or something.
Okay.
So you might want to consider that.
okay.
Pat, can I ask one more?
Probably.
Are you buying any hardware?
Just the hardware that's, the little pieces of hardware, but we actually get to use our everything that we have corresponds right now with it. Like our scanning technology works already with this whole system.
Not to get ahead of the game, but I wonder, is it better phrased in terms of the motion that may come from this to purchase hardware and license software? I mean, since I don't think you're purchasing the software. You're licensing it, right?
We're licensing it, yes. So, you're just asking phrasing?
Yeah,
Yeah, the
Phraseology?
wording
Yeah,
of the
that's
article,
fine.
I think. These articles are still being
Right, oh, okay.
tinkered with. So, I think if you wanted to make a wording
Right.
change, it would be,
Yeah, to license the software as opposed to the,
it
Yeah,
would not be
that's fine.
difficult to have happen.
I wrote it, so please insert it if it makes more sense.
but yeah, as I say, so right now, we don't anticipate any hardware purchase needs.
Then you should probably strike the purchase hardware and stick with the licensed
Right.
software.
True enough.
Sean, is it compatible, you know ahead of time it's compatible? In other words, if you've got a system, sometimes if they're 2 years old, it's not going to be compatible with your software. Have they checked to make sure there is no compatibility issues?
According to, what general code and our IT person talked about,
Yeah.
to be honest with you, over my head, but
Sure.
they had a discussion to determine that everything was compatible.
Okay.
So, but as you and all, we all know, that doesn't necessarily.
Yeah, those
So,
are.
obviously, before, once we get this, funded, we will, before we sign the contract, we'll make sure that all gets completely ironed out and completely,
Sure.
I's dotted, T's crossed, and make sure they come in and do a test run and, everything along those lines, because, we're still at the, we can't, if we don't have the funding, we can't sign, and,
Sure.
unless they're at the point where they're getting ready to do that, they're not gonna obviously be bringing all their people out to do the test runs and everything.
Further questions? We have one more article.
Is that it?
Yeah, I think
That's
we're-
it for me? Okay.
We're all set, Sean.
All right,
Thank you very
thank
much.
you. Thank you very much.
Your stopping by was very timely.
I
so
was gonna say, every once in a while you get lucky. Take care.
All right, have a good night.
Thank you. The last article that we have is the strategic plan article, numbered 111 here. And it's a not to exceed unknown amount. So if you all could just tell us a little about what that's about, and if possible, at least give us some thinking as to what that number might be.
I can't. This,
Voted not, I mean, it's voted not to be more than 30,000.
who wrote that?
Okay.
This actually just came up at our last meeting, quite frankly, which was less than, I guess, 2 weeks ago. It derived from a couple of sources. One is that the change in the CPA law allows us to spend now for recreation, in a broad sense. Two,
Broad set, sorry, that's interesting.
yeah, two, we're losing some, recreation is losing some fields at Freeman Centennial because of school construction, and the need, there was already need for additional fields. So we had started a dialogue about potential properties in town, either town-owned or that were available for sale that could be used for fields. And we'd also very briefly brought back the idea of a recreation building at Pond Street. And through all this discussion, what became clear is that the priorities and needs of recreation for fields and other facilities really needs to be identified and prioritized so that if we, say, made a proposal to purchase land, we had a solid rationale behind what was needed first and for what purposes. And so with that in mind, one of our members suggested having a strategic plan done that really took a look at all of recreation's needs going forward, say over the next 10 years, what it involved for space, buildings, whatever else that CPA could fund, give it a priority so that as we move forward, we can start help in addressing the needs. So because this only did come up 2 weeks ago, I think Did we vote not to exceed 30?
I don't recall that we picked a certain.
I don't think we even, because we really want to flesh out the scope of it and a cost.
So some of the reason it only came up a couple of weeks ago, Ann Proto, I'm the rec director, is because the fields at Freeman Kennedy that were planned, it is now decided that one of the fields is not going to be built for baseball. So we were short fields anyway. With the new school, we lost about 3 acres of open space plus an additional baseball field. And the baseball field was going to be put in the front of the school. It is now not going to be put in front of the school. So we are looking at some, we're trying to look at everything as a whole before we just say, okay, put one more field somewhere else. We're trying to come up with a scope of what fields that we need based on data and usage and hours of usage. I mean, I know how many people use our fields. We have, over 1,000 people on our fields every week. We know that we have high usage. I know what we have to maintain to, but it just sort of the last part when we lost that one baseball field. We're like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Because that really actually it hinders all of baseball. So that's why we thought we would start and go forward with an assessment and really put the numbers together. And we've done this in the past. I mean, we did it in 2006. I mean, I can give you numbers of how many programs and what facilities, but really looking at fields and knowing the hours of use versus the quantity of use, it just puts all the ducks in a row, and sometimes you learn from that. You can say, well, maybe this field isn't being utilized, or maybe this field is really being overutilized, and how we can address that. And we're looking at different properties in town, and hopefully adjacent. One of the possibilities is building expanding Pond Street, which would be wonderful. Do we know if there's ledge there? We don't know if there's ledge there, so we have to find that out.
A question, how do you handle the scheduling so that, two teams don't end up on the same field at the same time? Are you able to manage that properly right now without any, issues? In other words, what you had to...
There might be some small issues, but we have our field policies are on our website. We have field allocation meetings 3 times a year. We have, I can give you the Excel spreadsheet that shows what hours are used by what teams and what fields. All our fields are lettered and numbered. And
I guess my question is, are you pushing the wall on,
yes,
on the time and availability
yes,
in the field?
Yes. I can tell you, I mean, I have to deep tine aerate in order to relieve the compaction of fields. And that's it's close between $750 and $1,000 an acre. So if soccer field's 2 acres. So because there's so much use on it, you have to maintain to a level of use. It's just, if your front yard, you don't have anyone walking across it, grass stays pretty well. You put 40 kids on it, for a couple days, and just imagine that use, let alone every single day of every season. So we maintain to a level of use, but we are up against the wall. I mean, we had people, we are taking, we are asking football if they're there for 40, can they free up 45 minutes so we can get one other soccer team in on practice fields. That's how tight it is. And then with the loss of the baseball field, and for very sound reasons, I might add, no one's disagreeing with that decision. It's just a matter of lack of space and trying to expand and doing it well instead of just, if any of you are familiar with the fields at Freeman Kennedy or the older fields, I think it was, we need a softball field, we'll put it here. Oh, we need a football field. We'll put it here. Granted, it was many years ago, but what you now have is you have a Babe Ruth field that's short. You have a football field that the edge of the football field is the lip of the softball field, which is incredibly hard to maintain. You have the backstop to the softball field, which negates the width of a full-size soccer field. So we don't want to make those mistakes again. We want to look at the layout of all the fields, and not Pond Street's fine, but I mean, we want to, and it's not about moving everything around, but we want to make sure that we're making the right decision. Fields are not inexpensive. They're not inexpensive to build, they're not inexpensive to maintain. We just want to make sure we're making the right decisions and we're not missing something, and we think the data will help us do, we know that the data will help us do that.
Thank you.
A question regarding, now that the CPC is involved in recreation, there's the town function of the rec department, and there's this extra pot of money, separate pot of money, the CPC. What's the overlap here going to be? Is it rec department is operational and CPC will look at facilities and perhaps?
There's really not an overlap. I mean, recreation, we maintain our properties, we maintain our fields in conjunction with DPW, and we collect also a field maintenance fee. But what CPC can do is, now, what was different, before that you could pursue land such as Gump's Farm and build a playground on it because CPC purchased the land, where now the change is if Gump's Farm wasn't in process, we could, because the old kids' place is in such bad shape, and it needs to be torn down, we could rebuild on that property, and we already owned it. Before, you had to acquire the land with CPC funds in order to make improvements. Now you do not need to acquire the land with CPC funds to make improvements.
So the line I guess I'm asking about is something like building a playground on town land.
Yes.
In the past, I think clearly we would have had to look for town's operational budget
You
in
would need
order
a
to
capital
fund that.
expense. It would be $200,000 to $300,000. It would be.
Whereas now,
right.
the potential is for that to be funded out of CPC.
Yes.
So CPC is, in a way, kind of an infrastructure-related arm, and you're the operational arm.
But they're just a funding source.
Right.
They do nothing other than fund.
Right. Right.
Approve, recommend yea or nay. If you say no, can't go to town meeting.
Right.
You say yes, it can go to town meeting. Town meeting can still defeat it.
Yes.
But it can't get to town meeting without CPC's
Right.
approval. So they are the arbiter of the use of all CPA monies.
When will you have something, do you think, to fill this in, or do you think you're far enough away that it might be advisable to push this off to the spring? You won't be able to do this in the winter anyway, will you, or will you?
Oh, sure, we can do it in,
Just
yeah.
be planning with
Yeah.
maps and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we should be able to get a number with it, I'm hoping within a week or so.
It would take a couple weeks, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Can I ask, there's nothing related to this, but since you brought up,
sure.
whatever happened, you guys did, I can't even remember who you guys are, whether it was CPC or whether it was just recreation, but there was we paid for or allocated money for a study of the use of what's now the electrical field in the woods. I don't remember ever hearing the results of whatever it was that we were going to study, the passive. Did that ever come to fruition?
Yes, the study was done, compiled, presented to us by Beals and Thomas. It would have been available, say, in our minutes and such, as far as the desired uses for that property and what people liked and what they didn't like. But then the project died because of the solar array, and so we still have the data.
But we also talked about using the trails and
The
improving
trails,
those, and
yes.
it was more than just were we going to use the closed landfill.
Yes, the trails were not, the DPW did not approve of putting the trails in behind, at the very end of Medway Branch, in part because we hope to revisit that, in part because currently the dirt had been stockpiled there from the school, and there was a lot of earth removal equipment working around there, and they didn't feel it was a safe environment for pedestrians, walkers, whatever, to be going back there through the DPA activities.
But you basically have a plan in place that could be funded at some point.
We never developed a trail system. We were busier at that point working on around the landfill area with the trail system hadn't been laid out at that point. They were trying to work out the usage for around the landfill, but it's something that we hope to revisit. And, you know, Recreation has access to that data as far as what was desired uses as far as that property as well.
And what are they going to do with the front of the school?
So it's still under discussion. There's actually a playground meeting. We had one last week. We're having one next week. And it does look like the Major League field, the current field that is known as the Little League field, is staying. There was some question about that. If you're on Boardman Street and looking at the side of the school, there was going to be another field, baseball field, that was very close to Boardman Street. That baseball field is most likely, again, these decisions aren't final, but certainly have been discussed, will not be built. But what will happen is the parking will change a little bit, and it looks like the field will be brought back closer to where the playground is going in. And the playground is now going into where it was originally planned.
All right, so you've lost me. So we're putting a playground in at that school?
Yes, the playground's always been in the plans for that school.
But it wasn't ever supposed to go in front
It
on
was
Boardman Street.
it was always supposed to go in front.
Well, how did they ever talk about having a baseball field and a playground in that
Well,
area?
excuse me, the front of the school, so it's,
When I'm talking front, I'm talking board,
okay.
well, that
Then two baseball
constructed lot.
fields. Yes.
Right, they were going to build some sort of intermediate baseball field, something we
Yeah.
don't currently have.
They were replacing the baseball field that was taken, that was
The new
to
school
be
sitting on.
behind the
But it was
school.
I thought I'd heard it was supposed to be it was a field designed for something between Little League and Babe Ruth?
No, it was.
No?
Well,
Yeah, Cal Ripken.
right,
Right.
there's a Cal Ripken League, it's a little larger field, it's a 50, 70, that was not designed there, it wouldn't have been large enough. You have to have a 225 distance from home plate out versus 200, and that was not designed there.
But it's not, and plus, not to mention, they still have to knock down the school, but it's not definitive what is going to fill that entire space?
There's more parking near Boardman rather than the field butting up right against Boardman, and the field that would be going in would be a soccer-type field rather than a baseball field.
So
you
they
can
are
have
gonna put fields
baseballs.
there.
Yes, there's a field, but it's not a regulation-sized soccer field. It's going to be a recess field. It's basically when the 3 acres that we lost by the tennis courts that was adjacent to the small baseball field that we lost, that's what's going to go in.
So the two, just asking a question for personal knowledge, you know the two fields that back up so that then when the 15-year-olds are hitting the balls, they can hit the little 5-year-olds in the back? Those two fields, are they still staying baseball fields?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the Babe Ruth field and the other major leagues. That small baseball field is the outfield of the Babe Ruth field. Again, an example of how we planned fields several years ago. Thank you, Sue. That we don't want to do
Alrighty then.
again.
Well, we've seemed to wander a little far afield here. Arlie, you have something
Is something relevant?
relevant to the topic at hand?
The Recreation Department, do you still use the Old Town Hall for anything?
We are trying to phase out of the Old Town Hall. We do have our equipment still there for a lot of our programs, but we are working with a school to share the space that was designed, the recreation and after-school program space. It's a little tricky because we have children this tall and children much taller, but it seems to be working out so far. And storage is a little tricky, but we're trying to phase out of the Old Town Hall.
So I guess this may render my question irrelevant now, but I'll chance it. Is use of facilities like the town hall, or is it the Old Town Hall, or a replacement for the Old Town Hall even more important? Is that also going to be covered in the recreation strategic plan?
Yes, it is. We are assessing fields, and that's what I've been talking about. But we're also going to assess the number of the programs that we're having and the numbers of registrants that we have and our growth. I won't say that 2 or 3 years ago there was too much growth, but the good news is I actually think there is growth now. I'm starting to see a trend, and so hopefully that says good things about the economy.
How long were the Freeman Kennedy Fields dormant?
Closed for use, like actual play, just last summer.
This past summer, that was it, or a year ago this summer?
Nope, this
Oh my
past summer.
God, they are in magnificent shape. They are unbelievable. I've never seen such, I would
Thank you
kill
very
for that
much.
to be my yard.
Well, we work very hard to.
You want to include your yard in their study? Is that?
Oh, they can have my yard. You want to buy my house, I'll give it to you for nothing.
We work very hard, and amazing that really actually, again, off subject, but it really says a lot for the soil that's there, because there is no irrigation except for the football
Yeah,
field.
it is amazing. If you haven't walked back there in the
Yeah, I
past,
have.
this summer,
Very-
those fields, and that's what I couldn't believe. There was not,
Makes me smile, I have
not
to
a single
say.
sign of burnout from the summer or anything.
Oh, well, look, this was not a good year for crabgrass, so if any of you are feeling those pains.
Yeah, I did see that.
Everyone is, so, but, thank you.
Okay, anything else on this particular article, the study being proposed for a fee to be determined so that we can finalize it? At least we know what it's about, we just need the number at some point. There was a suggestion made to change the wording of the software. And the warrant is, the not to exceed $40,000, since there's no hardware being purchased, to eliminate the purchase hardware and to add the license. I'm going back to the Sean's article now. So if you all want to have that change made or care, then I think the warrant is still pretty open as far as those kinds of wording changes, if you could let Marion know. it
Okay,
can get done.
I was under the impression that there was some hardware,
Okay.
but,
Then it can't hurt to leave. If you want to tinker with the language, I think that's up to you as a committee, since it's your
okay.
article, and if you feel that any of the suggestions should be made to it, then I'd say
I'll
get in
double
touch
check
with
with
Jack or
Sean
Marion or whoever.
to-
But,
Yeah, I thought there was
I agree
also,
with the
wasn't there
licensing
something else
software.
about you can't have articles that say not to exceed, or am I dreaming? I thought that, something about you can't write articles that way anymore. And to read not to
We
exceed.
can put an amount of 40,000
See,
is fine.
You talk to Jack just to
Okay.
make sure on that, although they've seen this, but I thought you couldn't do that anymore. Maybe just the motion can't say that or something.
Right, maybe it's in the motion, I'm not sure. I
you
can
can
double
look at
check
last
that.
year's motions, maybe that'll reflect it. You think it's a recent change, Mark, or just,
Oh, it's been a couple of years, I thought. I may be wrong.
so we can look at the motions. All righty, I think we've heard pretty good explanations of all of these at this point, so appreciate very much your time. It obviously ran a bit more than the 20 minutes or so that I thought we would be needing, but it was a good thing Sean showed up, because I think we got a lot of concerns about that particular article resolved.
Great,
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
thank you.
You are, of course, welcome to stay for the rest of the discussion if you want, but
Oh, I stole it.
That's okay.
Sorry. Here, you want to take one of these?
I have that, actually.
You do?
I'm good with that, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
if anyone feels we're in a position to take action on any of these articles, we can do that, or we can move ahead to other items on the agenda. So I'll give you 30 seconds to contemplate that, and then we'll just move on if I don't hear anything.
Well, we are trying to cycle through these things when we can, right? I mean,
I'm sorry?
we're trying to knock things off when we can, right?
I think that's, if it's fresh in our mind, and
Okay, well, I
not a
mean,
bad
it's
thing.
been a while, but so I move that we, oh boy, it's been too long. I move that we vote to accept Article 108. Is there a second?
move to
This is the crypt.
approve Article 108,
Second.
which will be renumbered at some point, but we're approving the article in substance.
It's the crypt repairs.
That was the second, Mark?
Yes.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we approve Article 108. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
On something.
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous.
I'll move we approve the $2,100 for the Tramp House.
Seconded.
It's
109. Article
109.
Seconded.
What article number is that?
109.
That's Article 109, the $2,100 for the Tramp House. Any discussion on Article 109? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It is unanimous. Now, I would suggest, obviously, we have to wait on the unknown money one, and the wording might change on the $40,000 one, so I'd suggest we bypass those. There are
Just on
tons.
that, I must say, I have a reservation about, it seems to me, spending tens of thousands of dollars on a strategic plan of this nature, I'm not sure is warranted. I would have thought that the town had sufficient expertise to form a committee and tabulate it, so I have a,
What was the amount that they were talking about, like 30 grand?
30 grand, I think they
Yeah.
said, roughly.
No, that seem high.
sorry?
That seemed like a big number to me, too. It'd be interesting to know what we budgeted for that strategic plan for the trails and so forth a couple of years ago.
A lot more than that.
More? I know they didn't they do flyovers and mapping on that, though? I thought it involved some sort of airplane something, which obviously must be expensive.
I can't really
That's why I
recall.
was kind of concerned about whatever happened to it.
So let's get a number, which we'll have in a couple of weeks, and then discuss at that point. But your thinking, Arlie, is why can't we do it? Why can't they do it?
Yeah, I'm really very encouraged to hear about the changes in the CPC or CPA mandate.
It was a huge thing
Yeah,
passed last year.
so I think this is very important. I don't mean to diminish the significance of it, but I just wonder if it's something we truly need to hire someone to do. I don't quite understand the technical character of it. So,
Then let's have a more detailed discussion of that when we get the number. We'll ask them back at that point
okay.
to see if they have, in fact, I'll give them some warning. I'll tell them that that concern has come up and give them time to think about what, the specifics of what it is that they're thinking of doing and why it'll cost that much.
That'd be good.
So, let me just make myself a note on that.
You know, what, on the wording of this other article, the licensed software article, I don't think Laserfiche is, I think that's a proprietary term. That is not, I don't think it's a word that has a meaning outside the Avante's copyright. So I would suggest that to record might be a better phrase.
Or store.
Store, yeah, rather than.
You're right. You don't want to be that specific in an article or a motion, particularly in a technology thing.
You're that company.
All right.
Right, exactly, yes. I'd say so. Do they also submit the motion?
All right. Since I'll be communicating with them about the other,
Yeah.
I'll mention that as well.
Were we going to follow up at all, or, I mean, I appreciate your comments about we don't want to micromanage. You know, if other towns, this is the standard way of approaching this type of a solution, then I understand that. But I mean, I do share Al's concern about hard drives are just such a, perhaps everyone else is doing it, but it's the long-term, most expensive, least reliable way you could possibly go. I mean, are our hard drives at least in an array? And again, perhaps that's not our concern, but I was surprised. Hard drives fail all the time.
Plus, it costs money while it's spinning. You have it on a permanent type of medium, and it just sits. It doesn't cost money to spin, so.
Yeah, again, if this is how other towns do it, I can appreciate that. Maybe this is the best of the current practice, but it just they just felt really odd.
I presume we're networked with periodic backups and that sort of thing, right?
I don't think that's what he was.
Yeah, I wonder, it sounds like our own IT people are kind of putting together something based on what they have in the quote-unquote closet. I mean, I don't,
But we don't have IT people.
Yeah, that's what I was
Rent
thrilled to
IT
discover we had an
We have a
IT person.
Part-time
We-
person.
Part-time,
okay.
right, just
Yeah, we
got
do.
him.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Well,
Okay.
he's half-time school, well, I shouldn't say half-time school, but he's a full-time employee for the town, and he will work between the school and here,
In an IT
A real robust-
capacity.
in an IT
Oh,
capacity.
good, because it was Jack as of
It was,
just recent.
it
yeah.
was Jack, and we
Yeah.
had someone that came in if we had,
And he told me about it. yeah.
Catastrophes.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, if maybe they can have somebody speak to the approach. You know, I don't care if we're going with brand X or brand Y, but it's just the, like, the architecture we're getting ourselves into, you know, that has long-term implications. And I think they've clearly looked at more than one system, it
Yeah,
seems like the
I
clerk.
think the problem you run into is you're buying a system. We don't have any expertise here in town, so you have to buy a system, and that system is going to come with that company's technology. You don't want this article to be that specific and all that stuff, and, you know, but, you know, you're simply authorizing them to buy a scanning and storage system for the town's vital records, period. That's all you really want to say. Nothing more, nothing that would indicate a nod towards any technology. Because if they don't bid this thing for a year, God knows what the technology is going to be next year on this stuff. But if the only companies that do this, and again, you're dealing with, these are marketing to town clerk operations. I mean, you're not
Sure, yeah.
dealing with the, you know, the latest, modern, best.
I hear you.
I hear you exactly, yeah, yeah.
I
No,
hear
know
you.
just what you said.
I mean, probably if they don't say Laserfish, these people probably are horrified by the fact, what do you mean it's going to exist on a optical scan disc? That, you know, how am I supposed to look at an optical scan disc and
Right.
see this vital record?
Right.
You squint real hard.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's hard, where do we go from here with that one then? If there's still, despite the conversation, remain technological concerns, what do we do to, I mean, we get, Sean, I think, has told us what he can tell us. He had a consultant.
Yeah, you have to buy into the concept. If you agree with the concept, if you're willing to spend $40,000 for the concept, then, you know, you let them do the, you know, there are certain procurement laws that they have to go through and, you know, to protect the process. But we really can't sort of try and manage the specific purchase. That's well beyond our, you know.
No, I agree with you there. I think just some of, you know, some of the questions that we were asking were certainly relevant to that, where, you know, you have people in the town that have a little bit of expertise in every type of board we have, and that's a little bit about, you know, my little bit of expertise goes into that, just asking those questions.
And you let
You
Sean-
seem to answer it pretty fluid, but one of the things that they say in anything is, especially technology, is junk in, junk out. When they talked about, you know, the elderly volunteering and doing things, well, you also have to, in other words, if you just keep scanning things into a system and they're images, how do you find them? You have to have a management system for indexing properly. And I would assume that if someone's going to show someone how to do it, they'll index it and say, okay, this is birth certificates, so let me get you to this screen, and this is where you go for birth records, and the last person's name is Butters, so you're going to enter that in the B field. Again, you know, those are the questions that I'd want to answer. I would assume these have already been answered without micro, scrutinizing this. I'm assuming that they've got those, especially the way Sean was answering some of the questions
He
with
seemed very confident, yeah.
with certainty and confidence. So I think I trust the fact that they've done that. You know, knowing Sean, I trust the fact that he would have gone through that. And
Pat had asked me what, you know, have we done this in Wellesley, and we have not for any of our records, and I'll tell you exactly why, and it will happen here, is if you hire somebody like I think they're proposing, which I think is the right idea, to come in and consult and do the scanning, bring in their flunkies to sit there for 12 hours a day in front of a machine and feed piece of paper after piece of paper in, that will get done. Nothing in the future will ever get done because it's incredibly labor intensive to not only scan, but properly indexed, as you said, Al.
Index and manage.
So we know this, and, you know, every one of my departments in Wellesley has 5 times the staff of any department here in town, and we won't take that responsibility on because we know it will never get done. There's just, you know, so, you know, if we do this, it'll sort of be, we ought to understand that we're doing it now and we're going to catch up, you know, from, you know, 1,800 to, you know, 2,000. And then 5 years from now, we're going to need another, you know, $40,000 to then bring that next, because it's, I would be astounded to see that this can be maintained on an ongoing basis. But this town just doesn't have the man-hours to do that, you know. So I think it's a great idea, get the past in, and if $40,000 does that, you know, more power to them. But I don't think we can get so hung up on the thought that, you know, the selectmen are going to put all their minutes on it, you know, our minutes, you know, Susan's going to get our minutes, oh, come on. You know, it just, the reality is that's not going to happen.
I agree with you. I think I agree with you there, too. Yeah.
But historically, it should be done.
You might be able to keep vinyl records current because Sean says they're gonna save time, so now they'll have time to.
It really does come down to the indexing, and I don't pretend to understand how that works, but so you can't just put in a copy, a scanner machine, and suddenly it feeds into an index by every word in there. It just, somehow that doesn't happen magically.
The labor scanning part of this is 19,000, and that's catching us up. So
And that's leg- I think
in your
that's legit.
environment, if you were 5 years from now, nothing happened, presumably 5 years of catching up at that point would be
Not
some
going to be
fraction
19,000,
of-
right. This
Yeah.
is going back to
half
18,
of
whatever.
19,000 or
Right.
something, 10 grand or something. So
And going down
It
this
might
road, we
be a
just have
10
to
grand.
understand that we're
Yeah.
going to have to revisit it in
Yep.
X years to get the next batch updated.
But if you translate that into, you know, 2 grand a year, 3 grand a year or something as an ongoing kind of expense, it's not such a terrible
Yeah.
thing.
If Sean were going to come back for some other reason, we could, I'm sure, ask him a few more questions, but I'm satisfied with what I've heard.
May have something to do with the zoning bylaw study committee. Isn't that usually the town clerk involved in that thing? I know
Oh, yeah, you're right.
they have
Yeah, yeah,
several
yeah,
articles
yeah,
on here.
Yeah,
The bylaw study, whatever, one of the study
right,
committees.
it's not the zoning, it's the,
The bylaw study committee?
All right, Pat, what's next?
We're not going to
What
try
are
to
we moving on
cover, we've got, as you'll see, a ton of zoning bylaw study committee articles. Those are in a state of flux, as I understand it. We have the hunting, I didn't ask any of the selectmen to come tonight because I figured we wouldn't get to anything beyond what we've done here. We have a little bit of organizational stuff to do yet. So as far as the warrant is concerned, I'm content with what we've done tonight.
Well, on that note, I mean, I'm sensing some satisfaction coming from the opposite end of the table. I move that we accept Article 110 for a $40,000 authorization ceiling, or we want to wait for some language?
There's
I'm sorry, okay.
possibility of language changes there.
Okay, so we'll hold on, gotcha.
So,
I think it makes sense to wait.
yeah,
Okay,
it
very
does
good.
sound like we're at the point that
Okay,
you think we are.
very
but,
good.
I'd say let's see if they change the language on
Okay.
us.
I'm just kind of curious, I haven't had a chance to, you know, I've just been looking through, but I know, you know, like 105 is clearly an article that we said come back, and it looks like they're coming back with, if I can recall, what we said about, or maybe not.
I think we passed
I
it.
thought we passed
Jack had a
this.
note, he has a little sheet of,
I
cheat
don't
sheet.
think we did.
He says the legislature wouldn't
I don't
take
think
our.
we did pass that.
Oh, yes, I meant to
Yeah.
discuss, I didn't mean to talk, I've
Yeah,
talked to.
no, it said the state legislature wouldn't act upon it.
We didn't like the original petition, though.
Yeah, but it passed.
I thought we
it didn't
changed,
pass.
It will
I thought
pass.
we changed
The town
something.
one.
The town one passed.
Yeah, yeah.
But, as it turned out,
Interesting.
the town one, which was non-specific, what Dan, apparently Jack talked to Dan Winslow, and Dan said the legislature will only approve it if it's got somebody that you want, you've got somebody you want to give the license to.
I don't
Now,
know.
that doesn't, that does
Specific to
not
an address.
mean that you have to give them the license. It means that you
Or
get
considering.
the authority to give them the license. You then decide whether or not to give the license to that particular operation.
That's right,
Maybe
so that's,
no,
and that's what we
but it can't
changed
go to
relative to the
anybody
original
I thought all we
request.
did was say, just request the authority from the legislature for one additional license,
That's right.
end, period.
That's right,
Which
but-
is every,
They said
you
no.
absolutely have the
We
right
had
to do
two
that.
articles. We had two articles.
No, but the only one that passed, Pat, is the
Right,
one that.
the one that was non-specific.
And they're saying we don't have the right to ask for one additional license?
Anonymous.
Only the legislature can grant the ability of a town to exceed its, as I've always understood, they're the only body that has the right to grant us the permission to exceed the statutory number of of licenses, but you have to go to the legislature, so
So that's.
clearly need to
that
talk
was
to
the
them about
question,
this.
right?
I don't get the,
Okay, because this is what Jack is saying that Dan said. Now, I don't think there are too many people that know more about, having been a judge, that Dan knows a lot about the.
yeah, but it was
the
Dan that
law,
was
but
bringing
on the
this
other hand, he
forward
could
on
well be
behalf
wrong.
of that one individual.
I was wondering, coming back with that, I was wondering how legal counsel let it by
Missed that?
last year, if in fact we couldn't
Something,
request it that way. So
For whatever
somebody-
reason, they just didn't choose to accept.
they
it.
chose not to act upon our
Right,
request for
right.
one
I don't think
additional
it wasn't-
license.
It wasn't legal.
That's
The
right.
message from Jack is that the article as we approved it cannot be acted upon by the legislature.
So then is Jack resubmitting it with new language?
Well, what we've got
This is the
here,
original.
Article 105, is a resubmission basically of the article that we did not approve last time, the one that earmarked the license for the
Which
food
Jack
mart.
believes will correct the defect in the legislature's eyes.
Yes, that if we request it for somebody, then
Okay.
in theory at least they can approve it, and then we can decide as a town whether or not to grant it.
I don't think it's the same. I think this, if you take a look at the next to last paragraph, this is now not only, it says, this is specific to a location, which I don't remember.
That's the article that was the petitioner article that we voted down.
But that's what, it's here
This
again.
Article 105, it's back again. The article that's not back again is the article that we approved, which we're being
Non-specific
told
to a
cannot be
location.
acted on.
Okay, right, I guess, then I guess I'm struck by the petitioner not only is petitioning for himself or herself, but also for the specific place where they're doing business.
And that's crazy to me, that
That's-
they knocked that building down, we can't ever issue another additional liquor license. It's just, that's insane.
Well, wouldn't you sell
Well,
that?
the-
Wouldn't they have the ability to sell that in a move?
No,
Because
No,
that-
this
no.
thing says it can only be at that location,
Shall not approve.
and only for that
a
individual.
license to any other location.
That's.
I don't know what got submitted to the
that's-
legislature.
I think what we're being told, rightly or
yeah, yeah.
wrongly, is that is the nature of the approval from the legislature. Now, I think questions need to be asked, and we can't answer them here.
Right. Interesting.
Interesting in kind of a bureaucratic way, I suppose, yes.
So we got that, we got the hunting article back in a
Is that-
new and improved form, and then we got a ton of,
But guys, isn't
Bylaws.
127 kind of, doesn't that stand out?
moving to the stabilization fund?
Yeah.
But did you see the free cash number?
Well, I presume it slightly exceeds, no, I have not.
$1.1 million. We're up from, I don't know what we were, $300,000, $200,000 to $1.1 million certified.
What happens?
That's what happens when
didn't
you don't
spend?
spend any money on snow and ice.
No.
We didn't budget for that, so that can't be coming.
But we didn't run any deficit either that we had to
No, I
allocate
know,
monies for.
but who didn't spend?
Oh, it must
A
be
lot of it,
unex-
as I'm told, a lot of it's coming from the building permits are skyrocketed.
Have they?
A lot of houses, a lot of
You know,
stuff
I
going
have
up.
that impression, walking around, that there's a lot more activity.
Yeah.
But 1.2 million?
Well, the school generated a lot, the building permit on the school.
All right, so I find it,
And we didn't expect,
that you come crying for a lot more money and then you turn it all back in? I don't get it.
No, the school, the building permit for the elementary school.
The building. permit.
Yeah, they have
Generated business
for
for the-
a whatever umpteen $1 million school, they had to take out a building permit, which cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's revenue. Now,
Oh,
Everybody
revenue
takes it.
amongst ourselves?
yeah, license fees. This is just what I was told. I don't know exactly how much, but
We'll tax ourselves to put it in another
Yeah.
bucket.
didn't this happen when we
KP.
built the other school? And there was a great hue and cry?
I would have thought the building permit would have been like 2 or 3 years ago, but this is just one of the things that I was told when I was told about the
Interesting.
number.
Oh, well, yeah, well, that would be a huge number.
That's exactly the same issue, Arlie, that Norfolk was getting the,
Right.
Yeah, obviously, we paid for it in the
Yeah.
total cost of the school,
Right.
but but it's a one-time,
Let's take
whenever
out
it
a
hits.
yeah,
it's a
Let's take out a
one-time.
30-year loan to put money in free cash.
The allegation was that we were.
That's what we did.
Oh, my
No,
God.
that's what we did.
You're right.
Yeah, yeah.
At least
Oh
the
my
interest
God, you're
rate's
you're
low.
absolutely right.
We'll have to, I'm sure Jack will explain it, but the main thing I was told is,
Taking it from one pocket
is
and
there's
putting
been a
it in
lot
the
of,
other.
there's been a lot of
At least interest
construction
rates are
activity.
low.
Exactly. Exactly. We got a
So
good
you
rate.
think that the school might account for the bulk of this?
No,
money?
I think most of it is the building permit stuff.
There are a lot of houses going up.
That's, I mean, I don't get around that much, but,
Downhill. back
Everywhere
into
you go, there's
yeah.
a new
Heaney
development.
Pond
Yeah.
development.
you know, and even we've got, although it's not a lot of new growth, but then the houses over on the Gumps Farm thing, you know, again, those are building permits, those are, because every house that goes up, you get some new growth, you get building permits, you know.
There's the houses off Grove Street.
I don't know.
I mean,
I'm assuming the new growth number must have been way higher than what we had, you know, had put in, and that just reverts, you know, you recognize that the
Yeah.
following year in free cash. $1.1 million.
You must have all seen that presentation on what the town will look like after we do the completion over here. With the new
With a
stores
new
and the movie
bridge and,
theater.
yeah,
and
yeah.
the,
When's the last
that's
time we
your-
added money to the stabilization?
Yeah, my guess is it's revenue,
Historically, I
not
mean-
expenses. That.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know how much,
Well,
you know,
because
they've not
all
gotten
the
spent.
budgets are so tight, there's no way anybody could turn in a ton of free cash.
Yeah, I don't know.
Wouldn't think
I
so.
just,
No.
I got told this at a meeting, and it was kind of in passing.
No,
I was
but-
like, I nearly fell over when she told
But
me.
I could easily see us, we were pretty conservative on miscellaneous revenues, and if those, you know, in all categories, not just building permits, so if
Well-
that came in a little better, you could easily have.
But that is the origin of why, and, you know, to their credit, we want to quickly get that out of the,
Banked, yeah.
you know, put it somewhere where it's, can be reserved and sort of a little more untouchable than just put it into play and let it absorb into 1 year's operating budget, you know, because everybody will be after that. And even with that, we're still talking about $600,000, you know.
well, assuming the warrant
I'm thinking
looks
vehicle
better next week.
stabilization fund.
Sorry?
I'm thinking vehicle.
Oh,
Does
yeah,
the,
that too. My plan is to ask a selectman or the selectman and Jack to join us next week. I'm hoping that some of these articles will be in better shape by then, and we'll be able to get some, you know, get them in a, talk about them in a form that we can actually act on them at that point. So, that'll be the plan for next week. I don't know, you know, there's really, other than the CPC, there's really nobody else.
it's all zoning bylaws.
Yeah, it's all either selectmen or zoning bylaw.
Just amazes me.
So
How-
I don't think we really need to hear from anybody in particular about most of these articles, except the zoning bylaw committee, I presume.
Does that amaze the rest of you that we have to make so many changes not even every year, twice
I
every
know.
year to our zoning bylaws? I mean, how do these things constantly come about?
Such an interesting topic, too.
I mean, you're right, yeah, it is kind of, but
Interesting
we've
in a
never had a
bureaucratic
town
kind of
meeting where
way.
we haven't had,
Right.
I mean, I don't know how many articles, zoning bylaws there are, but my God, the way I mean,
Ever fresh, ever.
There's like
well, you almost
15
wonder,
or
let
17
the,
of them
let the
here.
thing sit there for like 3 or 4 years so people can kind of get used to, you know, what's there before you.
Fun in that.
Well, look at 121, for example, removing the word stockpiled, and, you know,
Put in laser fiche.
something else. So, yeah, you gotta wonder.
And then the other one, I'm this 125, that we have to, somebody found a problem in a bylaw that dates back to 1985. I mean, that predates me. I thought I was here for everything that we've ever done in this town, but we got some kind of problem with a bylaw from 1985?
Where are you looking at, Mike?
looks
Sorry.
125.
It's on the last page.
125.
Thanks to laser fiche, everyone.
For
And
those.
then fees, so we got placeholders, titles with no
Town-
text whatsoever.
Town
They're
council
pushing us
said-
harder and harder on the timing for this stuff, because you factor in Thanksgiving and the time we have to get stuff in the mail, we don't have a whole heck of a lot of time, even though this is a short and fairly easy warrant. We're not real long on time for dealing with this stuff, especially in this fragmented form, so I'll see if I can encourage
How
a
about
little more
take a look at
resolution.
107? If the town will vote to accept establish a veterans tax work-off program and raise an appropriated sum of $10,000. To me, something to help out our veterans is always a nice cause, assuming we have a funding to do so.
The Board of Assessors?
Well, they have to
This,
administer.
Okay, I see.
In concept,
new
yeah,
law
I
that-
agree, it seems like a good thing. What I didn't like about this article was the recitation of all of the provisions of the law itself. Because if the law changes, then we gotta change our bylaw. I mean, I think this should just be a reference to the law.
It's not a bylaw, though. It's a statutory exemption that you can only act on it the way it's written into the state law. So, I mean, you could have just made reference to the law. But
That's what I'm saying we ought to
Right,
do,
but-
just make reference, because if they amend the law, and we've got,
Well, if they amended it, it automatically changes.
even though we've got words.
Yeah, we
It's a whole lot of
can't,
money
we
per
can't
tap per
override,
year.
unless there's a variable in here, which I think the $10,000 is probably a variable.
It's
Well,
not,
I struck there, you can't pay more than minimum wage either.
That's within the,
That's
and again,
within the
it's
statute.
not, we're not paying them, we're
Reducing
taking
the
this
credits.
amount off of their real estate tax.
Up to $1,000. But
and this is a one-time appropriation.
No, it's every year. It's a program that's available every year, just like
But-
the senior work-off program.
What if it's not in the overlay account? Oh, it must be in the overlay account by definition, if the tax has been incurred but not paid? So it's always going to be funded in this?
The overlay is available, what the overlay is when you grant an abatement for a reduction in value, that hits this reserve called the overlay. I didn't think exemptions do, we'll have to get them in to explain what they mean by.
Right, because it seems like that's a good point. If we adopt it, then will it have to be funded on a year-by-year basis?
Probably in the miscellaneous revenue category. As a counter, as a
Well, we
contra
had,
revenue,
we
I
had
guess.
some challenges when we looked at the overlay accounts. Was it 2 years ago? And
It's usually the assessors that would oppose us. We asked to try and reduce it or take some
Yeah.
surplus funds out of it. They're recommending this, so, I don't know.
All right.
You're thinking that's where it would come from?
No, it says right in here something
Does it?
about, I thought, didn't it say something about $10,000 from the overlay?
It's rather casual language. This program
Raise
would
and
be funded from the
appropriate.
overlay
Program would be
account.
funded from the
Oh, from
overlay
the overlay
account.
account.
And
That's
would
what
be
I-
similar to the program that the town has in place for seniors?
Yeah, we do have a senior work-off program currently in place.
No, it's just rather casual language for a motion, I guess.
Yeah, that's what, this seems to me like it's the
Right,
explanation. It belongs in
maybe the motion.
explanation of the article, not in the article itself.
Yep.
I wonder
But-
if, because the senior one, I think, has, there are certain income restrictions. I wonder if this one just to any veteran? I mean, a veteran that comes in and buys a house in Keeney Farm, he could have a work-off program, even though he spent $1 million for his house?
Doesn't seem to be a restriction, at least not in the
No, no, no.
description, but who knows
It
what's
shall
in-
reduce the real property tax, so he has got to,
It's also going
Be
to work
unable
for
to pay-
minimum wage, too, so.
Yeah.
but it's explicitly linked to the property taxes on,
Yeah, no, I mean,
But Mark's point is
is
you
it
give,
for any
given,
veteran, or is it
given
income restricted?
relief to somebody that's in $1.5 million house potentially, because there seem to be no constraints or restrictions on,
I don't know if
Oh, I
there's
see.
a
We can get
restriction
it.
on the senior.
Seniors, there isn't?
so it'd be the same thing there. If they're willing to work for minimum wage,
Right,
as Al
and it
says.
can't exceed $1,000, so you're gonna, to work for $1 million,
Yeah.
minimum wage to make $1,000 to try to pay off a tax bill,
Somebody's gotta work
yeah,
120
yeah.
Right.
hours or something.
And maybe
like that.
the $1 million house at that point will be up for sale, so Mark will be buying it.
Yeah.
Righty.
so we have 10 veterans accounted for here.
We have some other non-warrant related issues to take care of. In particular, the Capital Committee is going to convene next week. We have to officially appoint our 2 members. And Dave and Art have volunteered to be the sacrificial lambs there, so we need a motion to appoint them to the committee.
I move to appoint Dave and Art to the Capital Committee.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded that Dave and Art be our two appointees to the capital committee. Any discussion?
You just have to carefully scrutinize the compactors.
Arlie's going
That's
to
your
attend.
only caveat?
Yeah.
Have you been,
Duly
they're
noted.
sitting there.
Will you be using
They've
abacus
done-
or a?
Arlie's going to attend all your meetings to make sure you don't sneak any compactors in on him.
Hey, Al, microfiche.
Micro-
Laserfiche.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It is unanimous. We have our appointees.
Looks like you're gonna have money to do
Yeah.
something with, too.
They're
That's even
meeting
better.
next Tuesday night for the first time. It'll be an organizational meeting to organize themselves.
Do you have,
Who
and
else
did
is
you
on the
hear
committee?
anything? That's what I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
who else is on your committee?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Guess we're gonna find out Tuesday.
We had several people, but I think their terms must have run out by now.
You got
Alan?
I think everybody's
Alice
term
Moore?
has run out.
Yeah.
And
So
there's- it's a whole new
fresh slate.
committee.
Okay.
Trying to put the band back together again. I'll be out next week. I'm out of town, so I'll follow up with the selectmen for that, and we're meeting Wednesday of next week,
Yes.
right? So I won't be here.
Which is another agenda item, which is to schedule our meetings. It'll be the usual every Wednesday at 7:30 until we're no longer needed. So plan on that if you can.
Well, actually, I won't be here next Wednesday either.
Sorry, what'd you say, Mark?
I won't be here next Wednesday either.
Okay. That's at least two gone.
All the rest I'm good for, it's just I'm in Los Angeles that week, so.
I'll put the meeting notes on Fiche and send it to you.
Laserfiche.
With the magnifying glass, don't forget the magnifying glass.
All you'll need is a magnifying
I'm
glass.
sorry, I can only deal with microfilm.
I wonder if they have a-
I'm not sure they have PDF microfiche.
As long as it's searchable.
Our minutes?
Yeah, I sent them to you. Did you have we only have one set. It was from the final meeting. They're very brief.
So our town meeting's on the 29th of November?
Yes. Very brief. You can take a look at them now
Yeah,
if you'd like.
Pass that down, please.
You must have looked at the warrant and never looked at the minutes. Did you guys all read the minutes?
How long ago was that?
No one's had the minutes.
Oh,
I sent them to you a couple of days ago.
you did? I don't have any
Those
messages.
emails slipped by.
Huh. Oh, well, then let's just put this off till next week,
Okay.
Yeah.
since nobody's seen them at this point. Capital Committee, schedule, PC minutes, That's all I have.
So who are you gonna have in next week, do you know?
Next week will be the Selectmen and Jack, hopefully.
Are they gonna speak to the hunting article too?
I think the liquor license, the hunting article,
Okay.
give us hopefully a non-technical overview of what the zoning stuff's all about.
You're gonna have to have whoever the zoning bylaw study.
If they
committee
want
is
to
or somebody.
Yeah, might get one of them.
That's
if-
gonna probably take a couple.
Yeah, that's a meeting of
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
nights.
So I was thinking not them next week, but the week
Following week.
after.
Or
Maybe
if
they
you,
can-
I would not be opposed if you wanted to invite the zoning committee next week, the meeting I'm missing.
I second that. I second the motion.
For that 1985 treasure collector article.
Well, no, we'll get the big picture next week, and then we really need you
Yeah.
for the technical nitty-gritty.
The zoning stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Say something wholly inappropriate.
well, my guess is, two-thirds of those articles will be through in no time, because they're
We
just
don't understand them.
substituting, when you get down to things like eliminating the word stockpiling,
Yeah.
I don't know that we'll have a whole heck of a lot
Well,
to
that one's not zoning,
say
that's the
about those
selectmen.
articles.
That's earth removal, that's a,
But at the least, Jack and one or more of the selectmen will be here next week.
Every year, since the town voted to strike down the requirement for 2 town meetings a year, we have scheduled a special town meeting.
how's that worked out for us?
Is that why they call it special, really? 'Cause
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
So when
That's funny.
are we gonna have to go to print?
That's funny.
We have to go to print the first week in November.
That is funny.
Yep, we do.
We don't have to go to print then, but we have to have our act
Recommendation
Done by
together.
the 7th?
Right.
We'll need a week to get the printing done, the 14th, and then you got to be in the mail by What date? The meeting's on the 29th, what's our
10
lead time?
days
10 days,
prior.
so the 19th, we have to be in the mail.
And posted on the website and in the
Is it the meeting's on the
library.
29th? The meeting on a Thursday?
Yes.
Oh.
I don't know.
Where'd that come from?
I'm
Have
not
we ever
sure.
met on a
I don't
Thursday?
think I'll be able to make that, I'm afraid. But
It'll be an exciting meeting, all these zoning bylaw articles.
the $500,000 is going to be exciting.
Pat, I just wanted to let everybody know that I have here, there's going to be a memorial service for Dottie.
Oh, there is?
Oh, thank you.
So I have that printed out for anyone that is interested in attending, okay?
When's that gonna be?
It's the 13th at 1 o'clock.
On Saturday?
Can you, sorry, I imagine this went around, oh, this is copies for us?
Yes.
Okay, you want to?
Where, are they doing that here?
No, at the Baptist Church down on Rockwood.
How many of us, how many
Got
of us
another
work
one
with
of those
Dottie?
over there?
I've just written.
You were here with Dottie,
Sorry
right?
about that.
Pat, were you here with, when Dottie was the
Yes,
secretary?
she was my, I had a couple of years, while Arlie was chairman.
So just the four of us?
Oh, okay, this isn't about 1 o'clock, this I've seen.
Oh, okay.
That was the same thing I found on the internet when I was looking for it.
But it does say October 13th
Right.
at 1 o'clock, yeah.
So, yeah, we don't have a lot of time. And the warrant is far from
Yeah, that seems like your bigger issue, Pat.
the warrant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think it'll take more than a couple of meetings to get through it.
I agree. I think that's right. I think if we had a clean warrant, we could get through this.
And the only thing that is timely is the
So,
resolution of the $500,000.
Pat, would we be better off, like, meeting the 17th and 24th, and just try and get it all done, and hopefully on the 17th, there's a good version?
Skip next week?
'Cause then you still have the 31st
Still
and
have
the
the
Because
7th.
the
31st, which is-
selectmen are meeting on the 9th, so there still could be some ironing out
Oh,
from the evening of the 9th that might not get, done quite.
Well, given what's in here, I don't know, we could even do it the 17th and the 24th. I can't imagine it takes more than 2 meetings.
I wouldn't think so. It's-
All right, and we're going to
Pretty
plan on doing
straightforward.
longer meetings if we need to.
Yeah.
We won't be able to do the 31st.
Yeah, you may
No,
want to
no,
think
no,
about
no.
doing another night other than if we had to do the 30th that week or something.
Yep.
Right.
we could dress up.
My wife would kill me if I wasn't home to hold the dog from
No,
attacking
we
the
did, we
kids.
got to
Maybe
be
the
home
30th.
for Halloween. So
What?
you're
Do
saying,
you
let's
wanna
see,
do the
today's the 3rd,
17th?
skip the 10th,
Right.
do the 17th and the 24th, and
Yep.
then if necessary,
The
The
30th.
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 Yeah.
Yeah.
the selectmen are the 9th and the 23rd, so 30th would not be a selectmen's meeting, so that's fine. Okay, that works.
Great,
Okay.
Everybody happy with that?
very.
Sure.
Okay, so no meeting. You won't miss anything,
Yeah, great.
although you'll miss your capital committee, but that's life. So no meeting next week. We meet again in 2 weeks. And
All right.
by that time,
Yeah, hopefully we've
we
got
doggone well better have.
exactly a good draft.
You know there'll be, somebody will be submitting.
Oh, yeah.
No, that'll
Thank you.
never happen.
All right.
Okay, any further business?
Move to adjourn.
Seconded.
Been moved and seconded that we adjourn. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.